Welcome to the Listen to Your Footsteps podcast. I'm your host, Kojo Baffoe. In this podcast, I speak to Africans from across a multitude of sectors, including business, art, culture, media, design, technology, advertising, and everything in between, delving into their journeys and reflecting on the lessons they have learned along the way. It's about gaining insight into why and how they do what they do. These conversations offer a treasure trove of takeaways on a wide range of topics, including craft, relationships, wellness, parenting, entrepreneurship, and much more. So my guest today is Juanita Khumalo. She's founder of Trove Wellness. She's a digital entrepreneur, a holistic wellness advocate, and a keynote speaker. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. So excited.
That's the extent of the whole hullabaloo. So explain the name to me. Like essentially what is a Hispanic name paired up with Khumalo. And being a product of kind of like American television or Hollywood, I understood the name to be kind of Spanish. So it was Juanita. And then I discovered in South Africa that ironically, I met quite a few Afrikaans women who were Juanita. So where does the name come from? How did you get that name?
Okay. How do I summarize this? It came from my father, right? And my father grew up in the Brotherhood. It was in the Brotherhood. Not sure if that makes sense. So from a Christian church, it was at St. Boniface. And he was in the Brotherhood, I think, up until 28. So he is a teacher, he's a principal. So he started teaching basically in the Brotherhood, right? So for him, he knows the Bible from the very beginning until the very end. And one of the favorite characters in the Bible was John. And he loved his courageousness. He was very outspoken. He was very unapologetic. And he used to voice himself when of matter of integrity and beliefs. So he really loved him, and it's one of his favorite people in the Bible. And he wanted to name me something similar to him with the hopes that I could have similar attributes to John. So now what people don't know is that Juanita is the female version of Juan, which is the male version of it. And John is derived from that. So what he did then, that's why the Juanita from the Juan, which is the guy version of it, which is basically John in the Bible. So he made that, okay, cool, Juanita, basically so that it mirrors his favorite Bible character, because it can't necessarily name John, but it just named the female version of John, and it was named behind that particular John in the Bible.
Have you lived up to it?
You know what? According to the person that gave me the name, he said yes. He said that that's what he hoped for. And he said, he's seen me grow up in high school, and even now as a grown adult, he's seen me be strong and be opinionated, even against him, just because he says something like, no, Dad, I don't believe in that. So no, they've always given me that kind of autonomy, right? So he said that even if he was to die tomorrow, he'll die a happy father, because I have lived up to every single thing that he would have hoped for in a daughter and what my name stood for. So I guess, yes. The person that gave it to me is very happy. So that means that, yay!
That's all you need. So where did you grow up, and what was home like growing up?
Grew up in Kimberley, small town girl. People always tease me about that.
Well, it's interesting, and people from Kimberley have been doing some stuff, particularly from a South African context. There are a couple of people from Kimberley who have made their mark.
Tell me.
Of which you are one.
Oh, thanks.
Proverbs from Kimberley.
I know her.
Tebe is from Kimberley.
We're actually cousins.
Tebe, which one?
Tebe
Tebe
Magugu.
So there's also Tebe Galeshewe.
I
the
don't
two
know the
Tebes.
thing. Yeah,
And then I
yeah.
think Trevor Sturman.
Oh, I know Trevor Steeman as well. Kimberley is very small and Galeshewe is very small. So my mom was, yeah, I can't remember the long story short, but they're very, very close. So it's always great seeing him grow up to be the person he is. Yeah. So I grew up in Kimberley, Galeshewe. Are you familiar with Galeshewe? It's like the only location in Kimberley. You know, like our Johannesburg has got Alex, Soweto, and a million others. Kimberley only has one. It's called Galeshewe. So small town little girl, and I grew up in an environment which actually most people don't know. And you're the first person I'm sharing this to, apart from the book I'm writing, which is the only other platform which people are going to know. But other than that, big family. My parents were separated, so they were never together, but they're still both in Kimberley. And I grew up in an era where we actually did not have electricity at home. So I used to study with a candle. I grew up with candles and lamps, you know, paraffin. And like, you know, that like you could actually, we still have like 2, 3 at home even now. So
with a little wick.
And 100%. And it was a family home by my grandfather. And it was my cousins, my aunts. It was a big home, but there was like many of us. So I actually only had my very first bedroom, my own one, when I got to varsity. So it's always grew up sharing. It's one of those things where like a couple of us, when you have to dish up, I promise you, it'll be placed from here up until all the other way. Because there's grandmother, there's aunt, and there's cousin 1, cousin 2, cousin 3, my little brother. So that's the kind of home I grew up in. And big yard, my grandfather actually planted so many trees, all fruit. I grew up with figs, oranges, garnat, I'm sure you know them, pomegranates, and all sorts of kind of like fruits, but that's because my grandfather actually planted them himself with his bare hands. Chickens, the chickens in the yard, and I forgot what else we had, right? So we used to just play outside. And I mean, with no electricity, it means I was not even exposed to television or anything like that. So I grew up playing outside, used to study with my candles and paraffin. To me, I knew no different, right? And I used to have, I don't want to say this right, boyish mannerisms, you know, and I think I promise you, I was a naughty boyish in that element, right? Climbing up walls. I used to have my neighbors were boys. So I was always just doing things that like, girl, are you gonna break yourself? So that's home. And it was filled with love. And then I went to crash Little Light, loved it. And it used to pick us up with this bus with like a big nose. Loved it so much. It was so adorable. And so while my mom worked, my grandmother used to take care of us, right? And I remember there were a few times, occasions where I hid under the bed or under the dining room because I didn't want to go to crash. That's just how naughty I am. And then the bus would have to go, obviously, because they can't wait for me for too long. And went to Olympic Primary School, which was mainly in Afrikaans main school. And I think then that's when my strength in studies and leadership came through. Started winning awards every single year for something. I was in the Scholar Patrol, head girl as well, primary school. So, and I remember my father usually shaped that part of my life because even with my speeches, I remember vividly sitting in the car, talking me through it, how to say things, how to pronounce things, how to articulate certain things. And he was very political. So I used to have these rallies in the bedroom, my mom's bedroom, with like a couple of teddy bears there, and just like yes, did not laugh. So yeah, and then I went to high school, and high school same thing, and all girls school, favorite thing ever. I'm going to send my daughters to an all-girls school because, like, you guys have so much fun without worrying about boys just looking at me. Is my hair all right? We just rock up looking like whatever and just play and do all sorts of things. And even then, from grade 10, I actually started playing hockey before, but I think I started taking my cultural extramural activities more seriously. And I played hockey, and my biggest love was debating. And it meant we won a couple of debates, gone nationally. I was selected for the UN debating as well. I had debating merits and colors. That was like an absolute favorite love in the entire world. And hockey too, because you had to do cultural and sporting.
So
So
if I'd
those,
met you,
yeah.
say, kind of beginning of high school, or as you're getting into high school, and asked you what you want to be when you grow up, what would your answer have been?
I'm trying to figure out what it was. I don't actually know whether I knew at that age, but I don't actually remember knowing what I wanted to be honest. Um, because what I studied and what I qualified in and what I did is something that I definitely would not have known about at that age. I think that clarity came with high school. With high school, because I loved commerce subjects, accounting, business studies. I think business studies I scored almost 80 something or 90 something for my matric exams. But I always knew commerce, that's where I'm at. And that's where my passion is and love. But how exactly it looked like, I don't know. But business studies, accounting, those are my absolute favorite. So I knew along the lines that's where it's going to lead to. But and I hated maths, so I knew it's definitely not going to be anything that's mathematically intense, like your actuarial science studies, blah blah blah.
You did finance, didn't you,
Um,
in your
I was
degree?
I was forced to, not because I wanted to. Do not laugh. I'm being
Marketing,
serious.
corporate finance, and investments.
Okay, okay, cool. I've got a reason. There's a reason behind that. Okay, the reason why I had to take corporate finance and investment was because obviously my family couldn't afford to take me to varsity, right? So I had to apply for a bursary. I applied for multiple bursaries. The one that responded was the IDC, Industrial Development Corporation. And obviously, they're a financial institution. So one of the subjects I had to take, some of them, had to be related to the bursary funder. So it had to be. so I actually chose my majors based on the fact that snap. My bursary requires me to take these subjects, not because I loved it. In fact, I didn't even have marketing. I started with corporate finance, investments, and economics. And then I experienced failure for the first time in my life in first year. Oh my goodness. I feel like I went through, I can't explain it. I was like a well kept, passing, everything like that. And then first year happened, economics happened, and it just threw my life upside down. But I was able to pass and then have a conversation with my bursary and be like, you know what, guys? I managed to pass. Yay! Can you imagine the disappointment? I remember Nazaly's face. I mean, they'll just give me a bursary for good grades and I go ahead and fail my first year.
But it is a first year thing.
But
So I have a couple of friends, and
yeah.
So by the time I got to first year varsity, I had a couple of failures along the way. Like I also did not like maths, and was not very good at maths, and so for example, like I failed a couple of tests. I actually failed my final exam. I just happened to be overseas, so I could rewrite it without having to go back to school to to attend classes.
Yeah.
Because I was away for a year as an exchange student. But I have a very good friend of mine, and he was top maths in the province, and he'd never experienced failure. And we get to first year, and I had to do maths and stats, and I had to do accounting. And he wanted to be an accountant. I was doing it because I had to get the credit for like accounting one.
Mm-hmm.
And we failed our first test. And I'm just like, oh, okay, cool. And I go play pool because I've done this before. And he
Took it badly.
took it badly, and we'd go back and sit and look at the test paper and kind of try and see where he went wrong. And I watched him kind of go through this loop. It's like the worse he did, the more stressed he was about it, the more he focused on it, and then the worse he did. Whereas I would kind of brush it off and move on. And eventually I think he had to repeat a subject because of that. And I found it was, in my opinion, it was more mental than it was a lack of knowledge of the information on the page. How do you then turn that around? Or do you just go, okay, that's it, scrap economics?
I mean, I passed it, right? And then for me, remember, I chose my majors not because of what I love and wanted to do. It was because of my financial aid, right? Which I guess it makes sense why I would fail it, because I didn't love it. I didn't like it. I just saw it there as a textbook ticking exercise. So whenever I have to do something that I don't like, but I have to, like economics, and even with maths in high school, I hated maths, but I did it because I needed it for varsity, right? I actually scored like 80 something for maths in matric, and it's advice I gave my nephew the other day because he's in matric right now and he's not doing well from his grade 11 results. And I said to him, which is what I did with maths and economics, it became the strategy. Whenever I have homework, it was the first thing I did. If whatever I love, the one that I did not like, the one that was uncomfortable, that's what I would start with. I told him that the more you do something, the more you fall in love with it. And I told myself, I love economics. I love maths. And I'm going to start with it every single time. Those are the ones I'm going to start with. And then eventually, through time, practice, you get better at something. And once you actually understand it, and then you realize how it works, then you realize it's not that bad. And I said to him, don't cram it, because when you're cramming it, you're just cramming, you're retaining, and boom. I'm like, most of the time, human beings, when we understand the psyche or the reason why something is the way it is, it sticks better and you're more receptive to it. So when you understood it, so that's what I did. I made sure that, okay, cool. The uncomfortable thing, do it first. Your mindset, like you said, I was like, I love it. I love economics and I love your accounting. So literally a mind shift step thing that you're talking about. And that's essentially how I got to pass it really well, and maths as well. And then after I got those stellar results economics, I had a conversation with my advisor and I was like, Nazli, I'll be real. I chose this subject not because I wanted to, it was because it's what was required. And I said to her, however, my love is marketing. And I want to replace economics with marketing. And it was a hard conversation to have because it is a finance qualification and I want to do something completely different, which is marketing. I literally begged and pleaded and I said, if I don't get more than 80% or 85% for marketing, and then I will go back to economics. She gave me that chance, thank goodness. And it was love at first sight with marketing. Love, like, ta-da!
Yeah, you're a better person than I.
What do you mean?
Well, in terms of, it's more that realization in terms of, like you're saying, changing your lens in terms of how you perceive what makes you uncomfortable. I was just strategic with myself. I was just like, okay, I just need to pass this thing because at the end of the day, I've had a degree for 30 years. Nobody knows what I did in the subjects. They just know that I have a degree. So my thing was, okay, particularly with maths and accounting, it's like they give you marks for the workings. So I just need to get my workings above 50%, and then I've passed.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody's gonna go, hey, did you pass accounting with 52? Like nobody's gonna know that.
No.
But I mean, it's interesting because
Unless you're going to work and they ask for your transcripts.
yeah, I guess I was also kind of very
Fortunate.
fortunate,
Uh-huh.
privileged to a certain extent. I mean, I also majored in marketing, so
Yeah.
I actually majored in economics, marketing, and business administration.
Oh my goodness, almost similar.
But my father had businesses, and I kind of worked with him,
Mm-hmm.
and I was always going to have a job.
Mm.
When I actually, in my last year of varsity, I applied for a job. So I went through, they used to have this graduate placement program around the universities, and I actually got a job with, I think it was Unilever.
Mm.
But that was marketing. So, and you went through the program before you actually wrote your final exams.
Ah.
And the requirement was like, as long as, like, if you've passed, you have the job. Because the interview process was, I think, 2-3 months.
Rigorous process, yeah.
And so, technically speaking, I already had a job before I wrote my exams. And okay, that didn't pan out, but I had a job in Lesotho because we had 3-4 businesses.
Mm.
In fact, when I moved back home, my father said, I've just started an IT company. I'm old, you are young, you figure it out. So I had that, let's say, safety net of a job. And since then, I came across my transcript the other day because I was looking in the box with all my papers for something else.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't see my degree itself for maybe 15 years after I graduated.
Mm-hmm.
And I only saw it because my father was putting together papers and went, okay, here's all your documents. Like, you are grown up, you save them, you keep them, you keep them safe. So yeah, I guess I've been fortunate enough never having to go to a place that asked me questions and that required that amount of detail.
I think, funny enough, same to me, but under different circumstances. Because my transcript was a very eventful and very colorful because of the subjects that I did not like, because I mean, at some point, one of the many subjects was, what do you call this thing? Computer studies, IT things, and insurance things. And I was just like, I didn't sign up for all of these things. So varsity was very tough, and I barely made it through. I was always there by the lecturers. Guys, can we refute this at 0.5%? Can't we make it this? So what I realized though, and is that looking at this transcript, no one's gonna employ me. I was like, what? I wouldn't employ myself. And then I realized that, but Juanita, you don't have many options. So I was like, okay, what's gonna be my strategy? I'm like, boom. I was like, compared to my peers, I'm like, no one's gonna look at me. So I decided for my final year to convert it to part-time studies while I go work, so that I've got a foothold already inside. So what I did, because my final year anyway, wasn't going to be sponsored by my bursary, because remember, it was only 3 years and I failed 1 year. So I remember deciding not to go home. I got a holiday job in the summer, November, December, January. I needed to manage find something at clothing brand in Sandton City. And November, December is peak period. And I think the mall closes at 9 p.m. or something. So obviously they're always higher temps. And I was like, okay, I need to make money for my registration and for my varsity. I decided to work. And I actually did so well. For that entire December, I was number one salesperson in the entire group. In the entire group. I'm talking about your Hilton, your Akajo. Remember that whole, they all fell under one major company.
Yeah.
And I remember the guy that used to be the number one spot. Oh, he did not like me. I probably just like, this girl has to go. So, but I've always been a hard worker. I've always been smart. So in the entire group, from a commission wise, I was able to pay off my my registration. And mind you, registration is like 8,000, 10,000. Okay. So like back then, that's a lot of money. Okay. And pay 50% of my tuition. That's just how hard I worked. And then I was like, okay, cool. That's when I was like, I'm already in here. So let me convert my degree to starting part time so I can work full time. So while I was working, and then obviously there was some lady that came in. So with where we worked, you can't just come to someone, hi, can I help you? No, you need to watch them, be strategic, and see what they're picking, and then obviously, go to them in a different way. I found this lady, and took a couple of things, was speaking to her, and then I learned that she was actually a presenter, a reporter at CNBC and Forbes Africa, was a Pew, I think. And I was like, oh my goodness, I studied marketing. I'm like, are you guys looking for anything? Are you guys have any vacancies? And she's like, she's not sure, but she'll check with the marketing lady. I'm like, thank you so much. I'm like, can I have your email, contact number so I can send you my CV? She gave me her details. Next day, I sent her my CV. I mean, a CV that's barely anything. It's basically my qualification. Because I haven't worked. Yeah. And then a couple of days went by. And then I followed up, knock, 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 an email, hi, and then obviously people are busy. And then when I reminded her, she managed to get me a meet interview thing with the marketing lady. And when the stunning lady, tall, and I shot my shot, and then I got their internship. So literally December, January, during my short-term thing in retail at in Sandton City. Literally, you have to stand every single day, no sitting down. By the way, full hours from like getting there at like 6, so we can clean the store. Open up at 7 when it closes. Listen, get home around like 10, 11. Your feet are aching from standing the entire day. My mother worked in retail at so for the first time I was actually just like, you know what, Mom, I'm gonna give you props. Because this right here, I did it for like a month and a half or 2. And it feels like I don't know what. It's tough. It's rough.
You finally got it.
I was like, you know what? Thank you. So, and then I went to work for Forbes and CNBC. I was interning. They basically said to me, okay, cool. You graduating the end of the year. So let's see, keep doing what you're doing. If you pass, we could potentially move you up. Potentially. But I knew I wasn't going to stay because the company was fresh, I think like 5 years or so. And I know that at that point in time, I knew that in order to learn, most people, when it comes to startups, they go there on a very, very executive high level because that's when you're building a company and can effect change. But it doesn't make sense when you're like brand new out of varsity because you can't add that much value, if you know what I mean. So I said, because I don't have enough, I haven't learned enough. What am I going to add there? So I knew that I may have to go. So luckily for me, a year before I had gone to L'Oreal, I wanted to intern for the holiday, and they did not have internship programs. They only had the first year graduate program, right? So I was like, okay, cool, I'll come back again. Funny enough, they came knocking. Now remember, I did 3 months, November, December, January, in retail, and then I got the job February, March, April, May, June. And then July, I was approached by L'Oreal, like, hey, do you want to come? But I'm like, I still don't have my degree. I'm only graduating end of the year. They were like, no problem. You can come. But inverted commas, it's going to be full time. I'm like, okay, cool. And I was like, I need to make a decision. And hence why that thought process came in. And I was like, I'm leaving something that's guaranteed. I'm already here. Going to something where, dependent on whether I pass or not, they will take me. So I decided to choose that. I'm like, great ups, but also the cons outweigh them. The risk match the great rewards. And that's what I decided to do. I went there. It was not a cute 6 months. My boss did not treat me like an intern. That's a fact. First week of getting there, I was already in meetings with her and, CEO at presenting at like 7 o'clock in the evening. And she said to me that, listen, you have to come into every single meeting. And she's like, you have to speak and you have to talk. Because she was like, in this kind of environment and culture, if you're quiet, you're like that plant on the wall and no one notices you. And nothing ever happens to those people, unfortunately. They don't grow. You get what I'm saying? You get treated like 100%.
She was basically like, you're here to work.
Basically,
like,
she was
here
like,
to
100%.
Yeah.
And other interns were getting to make coffee for their bosses. Nah, I was deep in the trenches. I was going through something personally. And then I told her, she said, I'm so sorry. She was like, it's time but she was like, now's the time to wear big girl panties. Work harder. I was like, what? So she really molded me and trained me, right? And because, like I said, I had to speak. So, because she's like, these people are very busy, the executives. So trust me, you've got one spot to get their attention. And if you don't, you are literally part of the wall. So that's what I did. And then before the end of the year, in fact, happened, went to the GM and I knocked and I asked his PA, does Mr. XYZ have 15 minutes, 30 minutes? And she was like, why? I'm like, no, I just want to talk to him about work. And she managed to find, this is an entire GM of the whole of South Africa. She found 15 spots in there. When I got there and I said to him, hi, Mr. David XYZ. My name is Juanita. I'm the intern, CPD, and I'm graduating end of the year. That's when I get my qualification. And I said to him, however, I want to grow and I want a promotion in this company. And this is where I want to get. I want to become a brand manager. And I said, please tell me right now what I need to do in order for me to get there, because I want it. He just looked at me. Because I went to him and I said, I want this. Mind you, I'm an intern. And that definitely, because I was serious. And then he was like, you are doing well. Continue to do this and do that. Had the same thing with my boss. I got my degree end of the year. And already automatically I was in. So instead of having to fight with all my A student plus peers, I was already like 2-3 steps ahead. So that's how I managed to cheat the system.
We're going to call it that. It's working the system.
Yeah, it's working the system.
There's different ways. Different ways of working the system.
I mean, yeah, it had to, a lot of strategic thinking. You know what I mean? Especially for that age. I don't think I give myself enough credit for it. But like I said, I had to have a serious analysis, self-awareness. And I'm like, this is how your cards look like. It's not looking good. And I'm like, you're going back home. Kokazi, and I'm like, I had to go into lesson. Yeah. Like life or death kind of vibe. And you have to make it work because I'm not going back there. Why are you laughing?
Except to visit.
Pardon?
Except to visit.
No, except to visit. Yeah. But, and except to visit, and, but I mean, just in terms of progression in life. So I did it. I was the first one, I guess, in my family to actually get a degree, qualified. So I did it. I just wanted a different lifestyle and I wanted a different life for myself. And I worked so hard. And I think one of the reality checks I had was with my mother when I was in grade 10. And she asked me what I want to do. And I said to her, I want to go to varsity and I want to study. And she was like, my child, truth be told, as you can see, your father's struggling to pay your varsity fees. I'm getting sent letters every quarter threatening to kick me out. I appreciate the move from the highest primary school I went to the high school that I went to, more affluent, high up, but so she was like, realistically speaking, you are not going to be able to go through varsity or you're going to stay here, so already, my father wasn't rich and she was like, he's already struggling with it. So trust me, college is 100 times more in terms of financially. And she was like, I work in retail and I'm a sales assistant. I'm a retail assistant. And she was like, I definitely don't have the kind of money to take you there. She's basically said to me, wherever you want to be, how far you will go, it's entirely up to you. It's all in your hands. for me, that was a solid reality check. But obviously, one in hindsight, I'm just like, you know what, mom, high five. You did a good one for me there, because it removed that whole, I don't know, that veil of like, in not innocence, but you know that like La La Land, where I'm
Yeah.
just like, poof, welcome back, welcome to reality. So I had that. She basically said, "It's all in your hands. Your future's in your hands." And I was like, "These little hands. Like, what do you mean?" And I think also that's when I started taking my studies a little bit more
Seriously.
serious.
Yeah.
I mean, I was comfortable with getting C's. I could get more, but I really wasn't that big on education. I was big on my hockey and my debating. That's where I was. And then I remember that was a very sobering conversation, which is why then in grade 11, I was like, okay, these are the results I'm gonna apply with. And I'm like, okay, cool, stop paying extra attention. And then I got the results that I
How'd you
needed
end up at WITS specifically?
because I applied to like 5 institutions. And then I was like, Cape Town's too far, UCD. And I'm like, it's so far. I'm like, when I want to come home, how long is going to be a bus? I'm like, 5 days. I'm like, no ways. And then I was like, and then roads. I'm like, it's in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, it'll be a great experience. But then I was like, all jobs are in Johannesburg. So I was like, that means then I would have to move to Johannesburg and find a job here. And that is going to be more tedious. That's not going to be even be possible. Where would I stay? And I said, unlike if I just study here and then it's easy to get jobs, I'm here and I can move up quicker. And that's how I decided on that.
You are listening to the Listen to Your Footsteps podcast, a podcast in which I chat to Africans from a cross section of society and sectors, including art, culture, design, business, and creativity, to name a few. We delve into their journeys, the decisions they have taken to get to where they are, how they do what they do, and everything in between. Essentially, we go wherever the spirit takes us. Now let's get back into the conversation. How easy was it kind of going from a Kimberley to city of Joburg that has its own rhythm?
I mean, it was hard. I failed. I'm saying it was hard. I failed.
But you're still in Joburg, so you must
So-
have done.
The beautiful thing about my degree is that it covered accommodation as well.
Okay.
So I stayed in Res, and Res was on campus. So that really, I would say, thank God. What do you call this thing? Gave me the right cushion, because I was in Joburg, but not really experiencing Joburg, because I was literally my Jubes. Jubes is like you just walk down and then it's West Campus. I literally just had to walk down. And Girls Res, I grew up in a girls' school, catered all 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, supper, had a dorm, and you have someone cleaning once a week or twice a week.
You didn't get caught up in the streets. I have 1 or 2 people close to me that
Yeah.
lasted like a year at WITS, and then they were shifted to other schools because they were enjoying Joburg life
Too much.
a bit more than they should have, because at some stage you actually have to go to class. I won't say who, but people very, very close to me. I watched them go through that. So,
Really?
yeah.
Oh, no. I think for me, listen, the first year, like I said, I feel like I was going through, what is it that teenagers go through? Puberty. Or what it is. I was going through a state of confusion in general. I mean, besides having failed, I think I had like a heartbreak. I think I had a solid heartbreak first year. And I'm not used to boys everywhere. I'm not used to having to look a certain way or care about that. So it's almost like, what do you want to call it? It's like literal puberty identity crisis.
Yeah.
And like before, like I said, we used to be naughty. I mean, I was in the B class, and the B class is great because you're good enough and nobody cares. It's either the clique class, you're getting all the attention in high school, they ranked us like that, or the D class, the CD, the problematic kids. So the focus is always those there, right? And I was really in the B, but we were the naughtiest because nobody, paid attention to us. But because it was always those. So when I say it's so much fun, we didn't care about how our hair looked like. We'd be in shoes and we'd be like playing like properly, right? And now we're in an environment where even at Res, the girls are doing the hair. It's so I actually had a huge shift from being that mannerism to, looking that and caring what people look at me, how I look like, and having to have a boyfriend and now friends. And I was thrusted into friendship groups with cool kids, right? So it really was like a 2 year, 3 year long of just like puberty identity crisis, trying to figure out who I am, what I am. It was very confusing. So, with the going out, that did happen, but it wasn't anything where it was, concern really. Because, like I said, also stated rares. So it was still very innocent, going to, for the first time clubbing at Mont, I remember, so it was always done in groups because it's like, race friends. It was never anything. I've never gone through anything that's just like, that extreme. It was always in a controlled manner, having to go through a breakup and crying. I had a Tumblr page, which is still there. I just made it private. I used to journal and I write my feelings in there. And I've always been a journal girl. I've got my journal from when I was 15, you know that, and 16 in mint condition. I'm the kind of person I've always journaled. So, and then I use my Tumblr page to journal. So I was going through an identity crisis the first 2-3 years.
And then you end up in the beauty industry.
Yeah.
Which has its own I'm looking for the right word. Its own fickleness.
Mm-hmm.
Its own kind of illusionary aspects, its own shallowness.
Uh-huh.
What was navigating that life? And I asked this coming from, like, I came from a magazine perspective.
Yeah.
Right? So from a magazine perspective, we engaged with that industry quite a bit. Sometimes to find yourself within that is difficult.
Of course. I think for me, when I why I chose L'Oreal, right? Because I told myself I don't want to do something boring. I don't want to go be a brand manager for toothpaste, detergent, all these boring things. I was like, no. And then, and that's what it is. It was a beauty company. I was like, yay, I can relate to those things. I wear makeup, I wear mascara, right? And for me, and the thing is, like, from the industry, what people don't see, maybe from the outside, it looks glitz clammy, but from the inside, it's people don't understand the work brand managers do. You're looking at spreadsheets, analyzing qualitative research, quantitative research, putting together decks, 5-year projections, and formulations, and development of product, whatever not. So from the inside, it's actually not what it looks like from the outside.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Where 80% of the time, I promise you now, we're analyzing spreadsheets, data, quarterly, this, that, and it's, sales markets, this campaign is working, right? So what, even from the campaigns or the glitz, you had agencies that do all of the nice things. We were not in there, right? So the cute, pretty things maybe would be like the launch events. And I think for me, that's where some of the fecalness comes in, because I realized that in Joburg, if you don't add value, people gravitate to you because they can get benefit something from you, right? And especially now because it's beauty, and so it has a lot of your influencer work and your media thing. You get what I'm saying. So I think for me, that's when I got to realize, just how things tend to work in, Johannesburg, and people's intentions and motives. So I remember when I left corporate, it was a complete switch the first time. And I was like, what? And then I realized that, no, it was never about you. It's about what could get.
People are not interested in you.
No, it was what they could get from you. And now there's nothing. So they dispose you and they're going to the next person. All right. But for me, it was always, it's not like there's a ton of work that goes on behind the scenes. Whereas for us, a launch event, cool, get a look cute once a month or 2-3 times a month, go to that event and come back in. Right. And only, and I loved it because, like I said, it was my passion, and it was more about the numbers. I mean, I was in product development. That's when we started, and that was, again, I used to go to do what do you call this thing when you go to stores? Forgot the term for it, but it would go to, what do they call it? How could I forget? But nonetheless, going to store, trade visit, that's what it's called,
Okay.
right? And from my brand, 80% of it was in the informal sector versus 20%, which is the formal. Formal sector, it'll be your clicks, discount, blah, blah. Informal sectors, your cash and carry, your suit pennies, those are all in the deeper ends, and those are the sexy parts where you got to put your phone in your boobies. I'm like, wait, So, and even in from a hair care side, we didn't only focus on hair salons like you're in Stanton. We'd actually go as far deep into the locations as to that hair salon where there's no water and they use, you know, something to pour water in. So it was never that, if you get what I'm saying. And I never got to experience that side of the beauty,
Yeah.
if you want to call it, other than, like I said, the occasional one or two things that I mentioned just now.
And then where does kind of health and fitness and wellness come into it? Like, did you start
Yeah.
down that path while you're still kind of working in corporate, or was it a moment where it's like, okay, I need to?
um, apparently it was my journey into wellness was a result of, it was a detour, and it was a trajectory from a not so pleasant experience in my life that got me to go into that direction, you know? And I think 2020, 2017 and 2018 were horrible years. I was headhunted by a company in Cape Town, brand manager. Again, loved it. New adventure, no kids, no dog, no cat, no plant. I'm like, yeah, I'm going. And I did not like my experience in Cape Town. And I think that's when my mental health and well-being was just tanking, like tanking. I did not like that place. It was cold. Whereas, I mean, I came from an environment where here as colleagues, we'd go to Saturday runs in the morning with smoothies outside. We were friends. It was warm, and whereas that side everybody was married and like just going. It's just not the same in terms of the culture, the place. And I decided I gave it 9 months, and then I was like, nope, I'm done. Quit, no backup plans, sold everything, and came back to Johannesburg. And luckily, obviously for me, I did not burn my bridges when I left my previous place of employment. And even then, it was just a weird time. I was in a relationship was not okay, and I lost a grandmother, and it was just not a good space. And as most women, we tend to like emotional eat when we're not okay. And that's exactly what happened. And I was just like emotional eating, having far more wine than I'm supposed to. And then one day, before I started went back to L'Oreal again, right? Turn of the prodigal daughter. But nonetheless, I had a conversation with myself. I looked at myself in the mirror for the first time. When you look into your soul, there's looking into a mirror. Okay, cool. Hair, makeup, I'm good. And then there's that looking in the mirror when you see your soul. And when you have that look in the mirror, there's no going back, because then you get to see your soul through it. And that happened. And I was like, this is not the Juanita I know. This is not who God made me out to be. I can't relate to this person. And I don't ever want to spend another day looking at that. And I want to live my life exactly how my father saw me, like exactly how God saw me. Like that, BADASS girl, I was hardworking, smart. That's who I am. And I was like, yep, that was when things started changing. cutting down on the wine, on the processed foods, stopping a little bit more vegetables, more water, taking walks, and it gradually happened. Lifestyle changes take a bit of time. And a friend of mine at work, we're good friends still. We decided we want to get a personal trainer, and that's what we did. Started training together, and honestly, that's how it inverted commas started. Lost all the weight which I needed to lose, and I was looking fantastic, looking great, right? And a couple of months down the line, that's actually when I had a burnout. I had a burnout and I was diagnosed with depression, insomnia, and anxiety. A wonderful cocktail of all mental illnesses, right? And even before that happened, it was leading to it. And I remember I was launching a very, very strategic brand into the country. And it was actually such a brilliant launch that I did in South Africa that it was the best practice for the rest of Africa, right? And it was it was a lot of work. If there's one thing my boss did, she knew that she could trust me. I'm an executioner, it's one of those things. I'm like, boom, and then I'm an executioner. If there's everything you want to get job done, come to me, do it. So anyway, but I could feel I wasn't feeling myself. I was starting to not be okay, off balance, health wise, right? And I was like, okay, I'll go see the doctor when this launch is done. Because that entire week I had to be in Durban, Cape Town, Durban, with the founder of the brand, because we had just acquired it globally. So it was a very, very intensive week, and I had to do all the planning. So the Friday when she had left back to the States, the founder of the brand, and I think Thursday, and then that Friday it was the first relaxed Friday. But during that time period, I would get like these headaches, and it's not a migraine; it's not a normal headache. The pain would just come shooting boom, and we had a sick room at the office. So whenever it came, I would just like dash to the sick room and like lie down up until like it went again, and then I'd come back again. So while I was working on my laptop that Friday, and then something started going wrong with my eyesight. Believe it or not, I started to go blind. Like, my eyesight was like going, and I was just like, what on earth? Friend of mine, luckily the company, we're based in Woodmead, which is down the road from that place, Waterfall. And there's a hospital right there. So we rushed to the ER. And while we're waiting the ER, and then slowly it started to come back again while waiting the ER. They did a couple of scans, everything, all the things they need to do. They found nothing. Like, they found nothing. There was nothing to find. Um, which, I mean, it was a little bit odd by the point in time. It's just like, okay, but I knew something's wrong. And started to go there, like, I need to go see a therapist. And that's when I went to see a therapist. And that's when I was diagnosed with a cocktail of everything. And all the symptoms that I was experiencing, they were symptoms of a burnout. So I was diagnosed with a burnout and all these other illnesses. And they booked me off immediately. I was just like, what do you mean? I'm like, you mean from here? And it was for 3 months. I'm like, what do you mean? You booking me off for 3 months and you want me to just go email my boss the sick note and be like, deuces? I'm like, what? And I'm like, can I at least go, put together things, do a handover? But they were like, you are not okay, to the point where it'll be highly irresponsible for us to even say, go one more day. You're doing that out of your own accord without, we don't condone that. You are, according to us, you're all from this day. So I just went back, did handover, just put things together. I mean, if I'm going to go for 3 weeks and I'm looking out to 3 big brands, so I did that, and I was all for 3 months. That's when my journey with therapy started. I was in therapy for an entire year and a half, once a week. Oh my goodness. An entire year and a half, once a week, without fail. And 1 year later from that, I think then for me, that year was rough, but it was a year of serious evolution and growth and unlearning, and like just bearing certain traumas or things that were hidden under the carpet or that threw under the rug, either as a survival mechanic, and all of that had to come. That was just like there. And the psychologist was like, your coping mechanism is you're an avoidant. So when you see something that threatens your nervous system, I just brush it into the carpet because I don't know what to do with it. When your nervous system's not regulated, I was just like, okay, pain, I don't know what to do with this. Under the rug. Anger or hurt, what's this? I don't know how to process negative emotions. So anything that negative that happened, I would just like brush it under the carpet because I don't know what to do with it. I don't know. And that's a coping mechanic and survival mechanic that I developed as a child. Because what people don't know as well is that I was very suicidal as a child. In fact, I wouldn't say suicidal. I wanted to numb my feelings. So, when you're a child, you experience pain, right? So when the parents were separating, it did impact me. So what I would do is that like I would just, take my granny's mess, but to just sleep and numb the pain. Because, as a child, hey, painkillers, you take it when you're in pain. So I was like, okay, cool, let me take a painkiller and sleep because it'll like fix the pain from the inside. Nonetheless, that didn't happen. But anything else, I just like put under the rug, even growing up, even anything. So when I had the burnout, everything just poof fell out of the carpet, right? So I had to go through the process of unlearning, of healing. It was so bad that I was so, what do you call this word? I was so militant. And in everything I do, I was just extremely militant to the point where when I started therapy and I was in therapy, she had to teach me emotions like, how are you? To actually be like, oh, okay, cool. Oh, I'm here. And she had to teach me this is sadness, this is heartache, this is that. That's just how bad I was, just like robotic. So it was like a complete overhaul, And I mean, therapy was on Mondays. I don't know why I chose Mondays to do therapy. Some days it was so rough. I'd actually go back to the office and like go underneath my desk and just start crying because I'm just like, what on earth was that? So therapy is messy. It's not okay. I understand why people would run away from it. But nonetheless, after a year of that, and then I realized that my following at that point in time wasn't big, but I was like, it's young girls, um, matric, varsity kind of vibe because of my demographic. And I was like, they're all just looking at me and also just thinking my life is perfect, right? I mean, like I said to you from the outside, which is the 20%. It's part of your life, but for me, it's 20%. Because, like I said, 80% was like the real, unsexy work, right? But I was like, I don't want them to think that life is perfect or my life is perfect. And I don't want to harm them to hold themselves or compare myself to a stand. Not that it's not real, but it's not a full spectrum or description of how it is. And that plus coupled with the fact that depression and anxiety and mental illnesses are still highly frowned upon. Even in back then, especially in work, corporate, mention depression, anxiety. Listen, oh my gosh, no, oh, you're so worried about her. You don't know, can she cope? The pressure, promotion. It's sort of like a career suicide, right? And I think, especially for people of color, women of color, we've already had to work 100 times hard. All right, already there's more odds stacked against you, and now you're talking about mental illness. So the culture doesn't, corporate culture, it doesn't allow people to be human, and also because you're just irreplaceable, just like that,
Yeah.
right? So I was like to myself, for those two reasons, I want to talk about my mental illness. And then, very tough decision, and I decided to speak on it. And I think for me, it was to show young girls that, like, listen, this is my job. It's part of that. But I also struggle with mental illness. I've been diagnosed with one, two, three. So it's not just the 20% that you see, but this is part and parcel of it all, right? Because when you're that young, they can't discern that this is 20%, this is 80%. The prefrontal, whatever that thing they call it there. And I think for me, one of the other biggest thing was to remove the stigma or help destigmify it of mental illness, because it's one of those where you look incredible and you are killing it in the corporate space, and like you've got these fun, glammy, glitz, launch events you're going through. Almost looks like my life is perfect, right? And I was like to myself, I don't want to be perfect. like, heck, what the hell is that? I don't want that. Remove that from me. And I was like, number two, I want to show people that, yeah, it's possible to look absolutely okay, normal, and still have mental illness. Mental illness doesn't have a face. Like, you could literally be looking normal. So it was to really just bring more awareness to the fact that people expect or think depression has a certain face, whereas it doesn't have that. And I think to just, it was the most liberating thing ever. And I think that's when, in fact, my audience and I started having a deeper, meaningful conversation. Because even then, because they were watching me, but I think I wanted to let them breathe and understand that, like, no one has it all together. I still don't have it all together. In the midst of all of that, I'm struggling with this, I'm battling with this. And from a corporate side, to make people understand that, like, professionally, it's okay to speak out and not die in silence, because many people are dying in silence. So I realized then that this is actually what I want to do with my life. I want to help impart the tools, knowledge, resources that I learned through my journey with wellness. So it really was one of those things where, through trauma and a life changing experience, that detour, that it was a natural part of, like, okay, cool, great. Now let's go walk in something where your purpose is. And then I decided to, things start getting more in terms of, like, getting, work, interviews in my capacity. And I made the difficult and decision to quit my full-time job and to go pursue wellness and try and change, empower people with wellness resources for them to be better human beings, for them to thrive, and to just get to a point where I was, because I felt like I was the most evolved, self-aware, and the best version of myself. I know that sounds cliched, but then I also realized that that's when I had a big shift. Instead of only looking at physical fitness, that's when I was like, you need to be mentally fit, spiritually fit, emotionally fit. All those other pillars matter, because I was one, which was physically fit and in great shape physically. However, that's when, like, the car broke down, right? But that's because one wheel was okay, but the other three were not in alignment. So regardless how brand new or state of the art one tire is, if everything is not in alignment, it's not gonna work. So that's when I realized that the other three tires, let me work on those. And the trajectory with therapy, it's really one that healed me in those other pillars. So hence why then I started really advocating for holistic wellness, being physically, mentally, spiritually, but in every single respect. And that's how it is. And not that your life will find balance automatically, but you'll realize that balance looks different in different seasons and in different days of your life. So once you understand that and be able to incorporate that in your life, it doesn't make life perfect, but it just makes it better to navigate with certain things and to thrive beyond it.
I think it's also the one thing I've taken from watching your journey is that willingness not to be perfect, even in this endeavor, because it's very easy. So, somebody goes into fitness, right?
Yeah.
And starts kind of putting out content stories around fitness, right? Then to a certain extent, it becomes a pressure, right? So you're doing it because you recognize a need to be holistic about life.
Yeah.
But then the minute you find you start to occupy that lane, you need to be perfect in it, right? So it's like you're doing fitness, then like and I kind of followed your fitness journey and your wellness journey to a certain extent over the last couple of years. And I mean, I was recently watching, and this is where it occurred to me. So I was recently watching, I think it's the last couple of days, you posted a video around somebody asking you what your goals are in the gym.
Yeah.
And you're just like, just go in the gym. Like,
Yeah.
And that's how I approach gym, right?
Yeah.
But I approach it like that because I started going at 50, and it was
Uh-huh.
just like, I need to do something.
Yeah.
So there's no, also I realized my body does not snap back the way it used to when I was
You're
in my
50? I
20s.
thought you're in your 40s.
No.
Okay, cool. Well, the German, what the water you're drinking is working.
So I think it's the Ghanaian, it might be the Ghanaian blood. My father looked young till he passed, and he was like 81.
Is it?
Yeah, so it's
Crazy.
the good genes. Um,
Oh.
but I think what I was saying is, what I take away from your journey is that you also share, the ups and downs of that. Like, sometimes you're eating right, sometimes you're not eating right, and
Yeah.
sometimes you're regular in the gym, and sometimes you're not regular in the gym, and that's all right, because you're focusing on one of the other wheels.
Mm-hmm.
So that for me is what I've taken away from kind of watching that journey.
Oh, thank you.
And I think it's important for everyone, but especially the people that are part of your community, in terms of recognizing that, no, we don't have to be perfect in every instance.
Yeah, I think, women are stretched now more than ever over capacity, and we're trying to do a million things. Mom, wife, business owners, entrepreneur, corporate goal, their daughter. We're a million things. And it's easy for women, firstly, to forget about themselves, and it's easy, like you said now, for that 20% and them to think that there's something wrong with themselves or not being able to train every day and have it on lock, right? And truth of the matter is that doesn't exist. No one has it on lock 100%. Doesn't matter who you are, right? And wellness is not about perfection. And I think showing those parts for me is very important because I don't like using those words, but in terms of like finding inspiration from me, right? But I want them to find the right kind of inspiration. And I think for me, removing that perfection back then made it so much more easier for myself to just to be me and be who I am, right? And it takes a lot of grounding myself as well to not inverted commas like, to get it to my head or all of that, because I believe this was a purpose mission. We all have a purpose in life. We're all fulfilling something in our lives, whatever way it is we're doing it, right? And I feel like for me, I was like, this is, especially Trove, it was formed of, I had a conversation with God when I decided to quit. I was like, okay. I was like, we're going to do this. I'm like, cool. I had no backup plan, nothing. And I actually only told family and friends 1 week before I finished serving notice of 2 months. So nobody knew about that decision. So for me, it was to live out and fulfill his mission in that regard. It's never been about me. And it's always been about him and changing lives. And in the field that I'm doing it, I guess that's the field that it's been chosen for me to do it in, right? So for me, it's always about reminding myself that it's for his glory, less of me, more of him, and to always fight the ego, and we all have egos, right? And especially, I mean, I was watching the series Apple Cider Vinegar. I'm not sure if you've seen it. You should check it out. I mean, it was just about these two, this lady in the wellness space faked having brain cancer and used eating healthy. And it's actually based on a true story, some events. Started a wellness business, nutrition to, health wellness, that whole shebang thing, right? Which is what's wrong with society apparently nowadays, according to doctors, because you can't cure cancer just from like eating your cabbage or like having a broccoli stick. And to made a proper multi-million-dollar business with that. And it's the real story. So, but I think then it all started from her loving the attention, and that's a dopamine thing of getting attention online, digitally, right? So it's easy to fall in that direction where you love for validation outside, or you think of yourself as a demigod. You get what I'm saying? So it's easy to go in that direction. Heads off for me, I deeply, deeply stay rooted to my spirituality because it grounds me. Not that I'm not like that, but external things can show you there. Get it? So hence why it does make me feel uncomfortable, getting certain feedback from certain ladies. Hence why I think I always try to make myself as normal to them as possible, so that they, whatever demigod thing or whatever it is, that they remove that as well. You get it? So for me, it's always from a deeply spiritual part, and that's how I lead. That's how I do things, and from 100% vulnerability. And I was telling the team outside that it's sessions like this one that I'm afraid of, because the professional one, the PR question list one, that is the easy part. I can snap into PR mode right now, but it's the ones that's like this that's difficult, but that I do because it allows me for you to experience me in this way, which is difficult. Putting myself out there, being vulnerable is not easy, but it's very, very key for me to remain true to myself and true to what I've been called to do in this walk of mine. So, and for me, also just letting them know that life is a series of trade-offs. Like being a businesswoman is a series of trade-offs. Every day everything is a series of trade-offs, right? So no one has it perfect. So it's about saying, what trade-offs I'm going to make today, and that in itself is what balance is, and it's what it looks like. You get what I'm saying? And so I say life is a series of trade-offs. I remember this lady, I forgot her name. She said something along those lines. Businesswoman, incredible, smart, got her name. But yeah, life is a series of trade-offs. And I say, and so I'm like, just like for me, I'm like, when I'm not okay, they know I'm not okay. And when I'm training, you can see I'm training. And when I just, whether it's good or bad, it's about me showing up and being honest about however, and being clear and transparent in that, because to whom much is given, I guess much is required, and there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. So for me, I just don't want to uphold anything that is not true, and to not be very responsible with the community I have, and knowing how much it influences them. So I just always want to make sure that I protect that as much as I can.
Dope. Thank you very much for coming through.
Is this the end?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, what do you mean? Let's talk for another hour or two. I'm serious. but yeah, I think
for all this is very different. The PR stuff is easy.
That is easy.
This is for you. Like,
but it's hard, it's hard, but I think we'll definitely finish the year off on another one, because there is quite a lot to still unpack. But like I said, much of it I'll give you that exclusive when I write my book. You know that the things I've shared with you, I've never spoken to anyone. Other than my closer, as I'm like, it's not on record, any of those things. But that's because I trust you. For some reason, you feel like a safe space. And I think for me, such is very, very important, right? And even with the trajectory of the business, where we're going to, where I'm going to, and taking it between now and then, just, 2-3 very key projects that I'm working on that are very key, very essential. Obviously, I can't speak about it right now, but towards the end of the year, I'll be like, hey, let's have another one to close off. Yeah, sounds a lot.
We'll have it on yours. We'll have the conversation on yours.
On what?
Your podcast or your platform.
No, not that's not where I'm going. Is that you pushing or trying to narrow down? Absolutely not. But I mean, like I said, I've already shared that my book is one of them, and that is also just very hard, because
writing a book is not easy.
It's not easy. It's not easy. I think writing a book is easy in the sense that, like, someone else can do it for you, right? Or like, putting together a piece of paper and a cover to it is very easy. But when you're writing from that source, that's not easy, because it means you have to dig in certain parts and confront certain parts, remind yourself, or maybe things that you had buried at the back of your mind,
and re-experience certain things.
100%, and that can destabilize you. And so I get it. People that don't ever write again, it's a deeply spiritual and personal journey. So it's not easy at all. I started a couple of chapters already. They're done, but there's a couple more to go, and also just like the ones that I've already written so far, just like going back again and just making sure. And because yeah, the audience, definitely women, definitely younger women, because I think for me, I do talks, and a lot of them that I do for free and for charity. I don't post out there or for schools, but I think it's mainly for young girls to understand that, because when they see me when I do my talks, they see this and they're thinking and assuming, oh, or that I came from a middle background home or rich home, and you get what I'm saying, but they don't realize that this is actually the same goal that where you are right now, she was there, if not worse, because I was starting with candles and having to buy paraffin, and that was a norm to me. You know that iron thing here, it's like, I'm not sure if you know, but it's like iron thing when you put it there and like, yeah. You get what I'm saying?
Non-electric.
Yeah, 100%. You know what I mean? 100%. The fact that I shared a room with my mom and my sister, three of us. So people, many, I've never spoken about this other than when I speak to the kids that like, yes, like literally, so it's very important. And I always see the shift in them when they realize that, oh, okay, cool. That means like I can be where you are too. I'm like, yeah. And in that, you're not speaking to someone that's out of touch or has never been where you're at, but to understand that, yep, this is where I was and this is where I at. Like even for hockey, I was using my coach's hockey stick, everything up until you realize that this goal's not going anywhere, and he decided to give me my hockey stick. And I still have my hockey stick, by the way, from us. So it's one of those things that's like life is just a series of perseverance, and regardless of where you are, where you're at, for them to just so understand that, hey, I see there is she, the younger girl in me, is they're who they are, and to just make sure that regardless of whatever situation, because I mean, I grew up Gokasi, you get it, the fact that it's actually possible, as cliched as it is, but I think just for them to actually see and in real life that it's actually possible. See you end of the year.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this conversation. Please leave a review and subscribe. Check out the show notes for links to the guest, the podcast, and myself. I hope you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed having it.